For 30 years, Judith knew she had the truth. Then one Thursday, a cracked door, the flawless elder, and a terrified girl. They told her to stay silent, to protect God's name. What happened next cost her family, her faith, and exposed a secret they'd tried to bury for decades, in plain sight tonight. My name is Judith, and for 30 years I believed that Jehovah's Witnesses held the absolute truth. I grew up going door to door, convinced we were saving the world. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, I would smooth my best dress, pin my hair back neatly, and walk through those Kingdom Hall doors with the certainty that I was entering God's house. The smell of fresh coffee from the literature counter, mixed with the faint scent of someone's perfume, always made me feel at home. This was my sanctuary, my family, my entire world. Brother Raymond was one of the most respected elders in our congregation. A tall, silver-haired man in his 60s who always wore perfectly pressed suits and carried his leather Bible with reverent care. When he spoke from the platform, his voice carried the authority of decades spent studying Scripture. Mothers would point to him as an example for their sons. Young sisters would blush when he complimented their spiritual progress. "He has such a pure heart," Sister Margaret would often say after meetings. "You can see Jehovah's blessing on his service." I admired him too. We all did. My weekly routine was as predictable as clockwork. Monday evenings preparing for the book study, Tuesday meetings until 9:30, Wednesday mornings in field service knocking on doors in the residential neighborhoods, Thursday evenings for the theocratic ministry school, Saturday mornings back out in service, and Sundays for the public talk and watchtower study. Between these activities, I studied my publications, prepared comments for meetings, and tried to be the exemplary witness woman the organization expected me to be. I lived in a small apartment on Maple Street, just 6 blocks from the Kingdom Hall. The convenience meant I could walk to every meeting, even during winter storms. My neighbors knew me as the quiet woman who never celebrated holidays, but who always had a kind word and a Watchtower magazine to share. "Good morning, Mrs. Patterson," I would say to the elderly lady next door. "Beautiful day Jehovah has given us, isn't it?" These small moments of connection made me feel I was living my faith authentically. The routine comforted me. Tuesday evening meetings began at 7 sharp. Brother Raymond would often give the opening prayer, his voice strong and reassuring. "Our loving Heavenly Father, Jehovah," he would begin, and I would close my eyes, feeling the peace that came from being surrounded by my spiritual family. After the meeting, we would linger in the parking lot, discussing the evening's lessons and sharing news about our ministry work. If you're watching this story, I want you to know that I understand the comfort of belonging, of having certainty in an uncertain world. Perhaps you've experienced that feeling of being part of something bigger than yourself. I hope my story helps you understand that sometimes the hardest thing to do is to trust your own conscience when it conflicts with everything you've been taught to believe. Please, if this resonates with you, leave a comment below. Your story matters too. But on that particular Thursday evening in October, everything changed. It was just after 8 o'clock, and our midweek meeting had ended. I had forgotten my songbook in the second row and returned to retrieve it. The main hall was nearly empty, most families having gathered their things and headed home to help children with homework or prepare for the next day's activities. As I approached the row where I'd been sitting, I heard voices coming from the small library room adjacent to the main hall. The door was slightly ajar, and through the narrow opening, I could see Brother Raymond with Sarah, one of our newest sisters. She was barely 19, a quiet girl who had been studying for baptism. Her family had opposed her interest in the truth, making her journey to dedication particularly difficult. What I saw in that moment shattered something inside me that I'm still trying to repair. Brother Raymond had his hand placed inappropriately on Sarah's shoulder, moving in a way that made her visibly uncomfortable. She was pressed against the bookshelf, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. "This is how we show appreciation for Jehovah's guidance," I heard him say softly. "Special sisters sometimes need special encouragement." I stood frozen, my songbook trembling in my hands. Sarah looked terrified but also confused, as if she wasn't sure whether what was happening was somehow part of her spiritual education. Brother Raymond's voice was gentle, almost paternal, but his actions were unmistakably inappropriate. When she tried to step away, He gently but firmly guided her back against the shelf. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah's frightened face and heard Brother Raymond's gentle, manipulative voice. I knew what I had witnessed, but I also knew what speaking out would cost me. Everything I had built my life around, everyone I loved, every relationship that mattered to me, it would all be at risk. But Sarah's face haunted me, and I realized that my silence would make me complicit in whatever else might happen to her, or to others. The next morning dawned gray and cold, matching the weight in my chest as I faced the most difficult decision of my life. I was born Judith Marie Collins in 1963, the daughter of parents who had converted to the truth when I was just 4 years old. My earliest memories are filled with the rhythm of witness life, family study nights around our kitchen table, the excitement of circuit assemblies, and the pride I felt when my father was appointed as a ministerial servant. My mother, Helen, was a pioneer who spent 70 hours each month in the door-to-door work. She would dress me in my best clothes for field service, teaching me to hold the magazines properly and smile at householders even when they slammed doors in our faces. Growing up in the truth shaped every aspect of my identity. While other children celebrated Christmas and birthdays, I learned to find joy in theocratic activities. "We have something better than worldly holidays," my mother would tell me. "We have the hope of paradise." I believed her completely. At school, I proudly stood during the Pledge of Allegiance without participating, explaining to curious teachers that my allegiance belonged to Jehovah's kingdom. These small acts of difference made me feel special, chosen. By age 16, I was baptized at a district convention in front of 8,000 witnesses. The cold water of the pool felt like a rebirth, and when I emerged, dripping and smiling, my parents' faces glowed with pride. "Now you're truly one of Jehovah's Witnesses," my father said, embracing me with tears in his eyes. That moment defined my transition from childhood faith to adult commitment. I was no longer just following my parents' religion. I had made it my own. My 20s were devoted entirely to theocratic service. I became a regular pioneer in 1985, spending my days knocking on doors in the suburban neighborhoods around our city. I developed a particular talent for speaking with young mothers, often sitting in their kitchens while children played nearby, discussing Bible truths over cups of coffee. "You have such a gentle way of explaining things," Sister Dorothy once told me. "Jehovah is really using you." These words fed my sense of purpose and belonging. Marriage never came for me, though not for lack of hoping. In our organization, the pool of eligible brothers was small, and the pressure to marry only within the truth was absolute. There were a few courtships over the years, brief, highly supervised relationships that never developed into proposals. "Jehovah has special work for you as a single sister," the elders would comfort me. "Not everyone needs to marry to serve his purpose." I accepted this explanation, pouring my maternal instincts into helping younger sisters in the congregation. By 1993, 30 years old and fully committed to the organization, I had developed deep friendships within the congregation. Sister Margaret Thompson, a woman in her 50s whose husband served as an elder, became like a mother to me. We would spend Thursday afternoons preparing for meetings together, sitting in her sunny kitchen while she shared stories of the early days of her conversion. "The truth has given us everything," she would say, flipping through her well-worn Watchtower magazines. "What more could we possibly need?" Then there was Sister Ruth Miller, a young mother whose husband worked long hours at a factory job. We often went out in field service together, her toddler sleeping in his stroller while we knocked on doors. Ruth was earnest and sincere, the kind of sister who took every word from the platform as direct instruction from Jehovah. "I just want to make sure I'm doing everything right," she would tell me anxiously. "I don't want to disappoint Jehovah." Her sincerity reminded me of my younger self. Brother Raymond had been part of my spiritual landscape for over a decade by the time that October evening changed everything. He had served as an elder since before I was baptized, and his reputation was spotless. Born in 1935, he had lived through what the organization taught were the last days' most significant events: World War II, the establishment of Israel, the growth of the truth worldwide. His personal study library was legendary. He owned first edition Watchtower publications dating back to the 1920s. Brother Raymond has such depth of knowledge, the other elders would say. When you have a difficult Bible question, he's the one to ask. He conducted the most challenging book studies, handling complex doctrinal topics with apparent ease. Young brothers sought his mentorship, hoping to learn the kind of thorough biblical knowledge that might qualify them for ministerial privileges. He never seemed to seek attention or praise, which only added to his reputation for humility. In our congregation, Brother Raymond was known for taking special interest in new studies and struggling sisters. He has such a pastor's heart, Sister Margaret would observe. He really cares about each sheep in the flock. When families face difficulties, unemployment, illness, or spiritual weakness, Brother Raymond would often make personal visits, offering counsel and encouragement. These qualities made him beloved and trusted by nearly everyone who knew him. My own interactions with Brother Raymond had always been respectful and appropriate. He had commented positively on my field service reports, encouraged my pioneer service, and occasionally asked for my input on congregation matters involving the sisters. Sister Judith has good judgment, he once said during an elders' meeting that was later reported to me. She understands the needs of the single sisters very well. This kind of recognition meant everything to me. But there were small moments, looking back, that should have raised questions. The way he would sometimes place his hand on a sister's back a little too long when offering comfort. How he would request private meetings with young sisters to discuss their spiritual progress. The fact that several promising Bible students had mysteriously stopped studying after spending time in his guidance. At the time, I attributed these things to coincidence or misunderstanding. Brother Raymond was an elder, a spiritual shepherd appointed by Holy Spirit. The possibility that he could be anything other than what he appeared never seriously crossed my mind. Sarah Miller was 19 years old, the daughter of non-believing parents who had opposed her interest in the truth from the beginning. She had started studying with Sister Ruth during the summer, attending meetings despite her family's disapproval. Her sincerity was evident to everyone. She would take notes during talks, ask thoughtful questions during the Watchtower study, and eagerly participate in field service despite having no car and having to take 2 buses to reach the territory. "I've never felt anything like this before," Sarah confided to me one Thursday evening after a meeting. "Everything I'm learning just feels so right, so true. But my parents think I'm being brainwashed." Her struggle was heartbreaking and familiar. Many of us had faced family opposition when we first came into the truth. I had tried to be encouraging, sharing my own experiences of how Jehovah had filled the void left by disapproving relatives. Brother Raymond had taken particular interest in Sarah's spiritual development. "She has the heart condition for the truth," he announced during one service meeting. "We need to make sure she gets the support she needs to progress to baptism." He began scheduling regular shepherding visits, often meeting with her after book study sessions to answer her questions and encourage her progress. Looking back now, I can see how he had been grooming her, using his position of spiritual authority to create opportunities for inappropriate contact. But at the time, his attention seemed like exactly the kind of loving shepherding the organization taught us to expect from the elders. When he offered to drive her home after evening meetings, when he suggested additional study sessions to help with her baptism preparation, when he praised her spiritual hunger and dedication, it all seemed perfectly appropriate. The evening I witnessed his inappropriate behavior, Sarah had approached him after the meeting with questions about her upcoming baptism. "Brother Raymond," I had heard her say, "I want to make sure I really understand what dedication means. I don't want to make this commitment if I'm not ready." Her earnestness and sincerity made what I witnessed even more disturbing. My own spiritual state at that time was complex. On the surface, I was the model witness, regular in meeting attendance, zealous in field service, supportive of the organization's direction. But privately, I had been struggling with small doubts that I barely dared acknowledge even to myself. The constant emphasis on obedience to the organization sometimes felt overwhelming. The way certain questions were discouraged, how independent thinking was labeled as dangerous pride. These things created a low-level anxiety that I tried to suppress through more service and study. "We need to trust the faithful slave class completely," I would remind myself during moments of uncertainty. "Jehovah is using them to guide us through these last days." But the uncomfortable feelings persisted, especially when I saw how harshly disfellowshipped ones were treated. or when families were torn apart by the organization's rules about association. What I witnessed that October evening forced all these suppressed concerns to the surface. If Brother Raymond, a man I had respected and trusted for over a decade, could behave in such a way, what did that say about the organization's claim to be God's clean people? If the Holy Spirit really appointed elders, how could it have appointed someone capable of such behavior? These questions terrified me because they threatened the foundation of everything I believed. That night, as I lay awake staring at my bedroom ceiling, I realized I was facing a choice that would define the rest of my life. I could pretend I hadn't seen what I'd seen, continue my comfortable routine, and maintain all the relationships that gave my life meaning. Or I could speak up, knowing that doing so would likely cost me everything I held dear. Either choice would change me forever. The next morning, I made coffee with shaking hands and tried to pray for guidance, but the words wouldn't come. For the first time in 30 years, I felt truly alone with my thoughts, and the silence was deafening. The Friday morning after witnessing Brother Raymond's inappropriate behavior, I woke before dawn with my heart pounding. Sleep had been impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah's frightened face and heard the gentle manipulation in Brother Raymond's voice. I sat at my kitchen table with my morning coffee, staring at my well-worn copy of Our Kingdom Ministry, trying to find some guidance for what I was experiencing. The familiar words felt hollow, as if I were reading them in a foreign language. My first instinct was to call Sister Margaret. She had been my confidant for years, the older sister I turned to when life felt overwhelming. But as I reached for the phone, I hesitated. Margaret's husband was an elder who worked closely with Brother Raymond. How could I explain what I had seen without sounding like I was making wild accusations against a respected shepherd? I could already hear her response. "Judith, dear, you must have misunderstood what you saw. Brother Raymond would never—" The imaginary conversation played out in my mind, and I set the phone back down. Instead, I decided to approach this methodically, the way we had been taught to handle spiritual concerns. I pulled out my Bible and concordance, searching for guidance about witnessing wrongdoing and speaking truth. Leviticus 5:1 stood out. If someone sins because they do not speak up when they hear a public charge to testify regarding something they have seen or learned about, they will be held responsible. The verse seemed to burn on the page. But then I remembered the organization's teachings about not bringing reproach on Jehovah's name, about handling matters through proper channels. That afternoon, I forced myself to go to field service as scheduled. Sister Ruth and I were working together in the Riverside neighborhood, a middle-class area where we often found people willing to engage in conversation. But my heart wasn't in the work. When householders asked questions about our beliefs, I found myself giving mechanical answers, my mind elsewhere. "Are you feeling all right?" Ruth asked as we walked between houses. "You seem distracted today." I managed a weak smile and blamed it on not sleeping well. As we took a coffee break at a small cafe, Ruth mentioned that she had been helping Sarah prepare for baptism. "She's so eager to learn," Ruth said enthusiastically. "Brother Raymond has been giving her extra attention, helping her understand the deeper truths. She's blessed to have such dedicated shepherding." The innocent comment hit me like a physical blow. I nearly choked on my coffee, and Ruth looked concerned. "Judith, are you sure you're okay?" That evening, I found myself driving past Sarah's apartment building, though I hadn't consciously decided to go there. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, debating whether to go upstairs and speak with her directly. What would I say? How could I explain what I had witnessed without sounding like I was attacking the organization she was learning to love? Finally, I drove home without acting, feeling like a coward. The next day was Saturday, and our book study was scheduled to meet at Brother Raymond's house. I had attended this weekly study for 3 years, always looking forward to the deeper scriptural discussions and the fellowship afterward. But as I approached his front door, my hands were trembling. The house looked the same as always: neat landscaping, a small sign by the door reading "The Raymond Family" in elegant script, wind chimes singing softly on the porch. But everything felt different now. Brother Raymond greeted me with his usual warm smile. "Sister Judith, so good to see you. Come in, come in." His manner was exactly as it had always been: friendly, pastoral, appropriate. For a moment, I wondered if I had imagined what I'd seen Thursday evening. Could my mind have somehow distorted an innocent interaction? But then I noticed how his eyes lingered on the younger sisters as they arrived, and I felt sick to my stomach. During the study, we discussed Chapter 12 of the Draw Close to Jehovah book, focusing on Jehovah's love and protection. Brother Raymond's comments were insightful and moving as always. "Our loving Father sees everything," he said at one point, looking directly at me. "He protects his people and ensures that justice is done in his own time and way." The words felt like a warning, though his tone remained warm and pastoral. I found myself unable to participate in the discussion, claiming I had a headache when others asked for my input. After the study, as usual, everyone lingered for coffee and conversation. I watched Brother Raymond interact with the group, noting how he positioned himself near the younger sisters, how he found reasons to touch shoulders or hands while making points in conversation. None of it was overtly inappropriate. Anyone watching would see a caring elder showing fatherly interest in the spiritual welfare of his flock. But with my new awareness, every gesture felt calculated and predatory. Sarah was there that evening, sitting quietly and taking notes even during the informal discussion period. When Brother Raymond complimented her on her spiritual progress, she beamed with pride. "Thank you for all your help," she said. "I never would have understood some of these deeper truths without your patient teaching." The exchange looked perfectly innocent, but I noticed how his hand rested on her shoulder just a little too long, how his voice took on a slightly different tone when he spoke to her. That night, I called in sick to the Sunday meeting for the first time in over 2 years. I couldn't bear to sit in that Kingdom Hall, watching Brother Raymond give talks about righteousness and purity while knowing what I knew. Instead, I spent the morning reading through old Watchtower articles about handling wrongdoing in the congregation. The official position was clear. Allegations against elders required special care and should be handled through proper theocratic channels. Monday evening, I made my decision. I would speak to Brother Stevens, our presiding overseer. He was a man I had known for 15 years, someone who had always shown wisdom and fairness in handling congregation matters. If anyone would know how to address this situation properly, it would be him. I called and asked if I could meet with him privately to discuss a sensitive spiritual matter. Brother Stevens agreed to meet me Tuesday afternoon at the Kingdom Hall. As I walked into the small library room where we often held private conversations, ironically, the same room where I had witnessed Brother Raymond's inappropriate behavior, I felt my resolve strengthen. This was the right thing to do. I was protecting Sarah and potentially other vulnerable sisters. Jehovah would surely bless my courage to speak up. "What can I help you with, Sister Judith?" Brother Stevens asked kindly, settling into his chair with the patient demeanor that had made him such an effective shepherd. I had prepared what I wanted to say, practicing the words in my mind. I needed to be clear, factual, and respectful. I couldn't let emotion or personal feelings cloud the serious nature of what I was reporting. "Brother Stevens," I began, my voice steadier than I had expected, "I witnessed something last Thursday evening that I believe you need to know about. After our midweek meeting, I saw Brother Raymond behaving inappropriately with Sister Sarah in this very room." I went on to describe exactly what I had seen, being careful to stick to observable facts rather than interpretations or assumptions. Brother Stevens listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly grave. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "These are very serious allegations, Sister Judith," he finally said. "You understand the gravity of what you're suggesting?" I nodded, explaining that I had prayed extensively and felt compelled by conscience to report what I had witnessed. "I need you to understand something," Brother Stevens continued, his tone becoming more formal. "Brother Raymond has served faithfully as an elder for over 15 years. His reputation in this congregation and in the circuit is impeccable. Are you absolutely certain about what you think you saw? Sometimes, in dim lighting or from a distance, innocent interactions can be misinterpreted." His words hit me like cold water. I had expected concern for Sarah, questions about her well-being, immediate action to protect her, and investigate the situation. Instead, I was being questioned about my own perceptions and reminded of Brother Raymond's sterling reputation. "I know what I saw," I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. "And I'm concerned that if this has happened once, it may have happened before or could happen again." Brother Stevens made notes on a pad as we talked, asking for specific details about timing, location, and exactly what I had observed. He also asked if I had spoken to anyone else about the incident, seeming relieved when I said I hadn't. "That's good," he said. "We need to handle this matter very carefully to avoid spreading unsubstantiated rumors that could damage reputations unjustly." The meeting ended with Brother Stevens thanking me for my concern and promising to look into the matter appropriately. He asked me not to discuss the situation with anyone else while he investigated, explaining that premature talk could compromise the process and potentially harm innocent people. As I left the Kingdom Hall that afternoon, I felt a mixture of relief and unease. I had done the right thing by reporting what I saw, but Brother Stevens's response hadn't been quite what I had expected. Days passed without any follow-up communication. The next Sunday, Brother Raymond was at his usual post greeting families as they arrived for the meeting. He gave the opening prayer with his characteristic reverence and authority. During the Watchtower study, he made several insightful comments that drew appreciative nods from the audience. Everything appeared normal, as if my report had never happened. I found myself watching Sarah carefully during that meeting. She seemed happy and engaged, participating in the study and chatting with other sisters during the song intervals. If Brother Stevens had spoken with her about my allegations, she showed no signs of distress or concern. In fact, she approached Brother Raymond after the meeting to ask a question about the study material, and their interaction appeared completely normal. After 2 weeks without any word from Brother Stevens, I requested another meeting. This time, his demeanor was noticeably cooler. "Sister Judith," he began before I could even sit down, "I've completed my preliminary investigation of your concerns. I spoke with Brother Raymond about the evening in question, and he has a completely different recollection of events." According to Brother Stevens, Brother Raymond remembered the conversation with Sarah, but described it as a routine discussion about her baptism preparation. He had been showing her some reference materials from the library, which explained why they were in close proximity. "He's concerned that you may have misinterpreted his fatherly interest in a new sister's spiritual progress," Brother Stevens explained. "Did you speak with Sarah about what happened?" I asked, my heart sinking as I anticipated the answer. "I spoke with her generally about how she's feeling about her spiritual progress, and whether she's had any concerns about her study or interactions with the elders," Brother Stevens replied carefully. "She expressed nothing but gratitude for the help she's received, particularly from Brother Raymond. She seems very happy and well-adjusted in her spiritual development." The implication was clear. My allegations were unsubstantiated and potentially damaging to a faithful elder's reputation. Brother Stevens spent the next 20 minutes explaining the Bible's requirements for establishing wrongdoing, the need for 2 or 3 witnesses, the importance of not bringing false accusations against appointed men, the serious consequences of spreading harmful gossip about faithful servants. "I want you to prayerfully consider whether you might have misunderstood what you witnessed," he concluded. "Sometimes, when we're tired or stressed, our perceptions can be affected. Brother Raymond is a man of impeccable character who has devoted his life to serving Jehovah and his people. I would hate for a misunderstanding to damage his reputation or cause division in our loving congregation." I left that second meeting feeling confused and defeated. Was it possible that I had misinterpreted what I saw? Could fatigue or stress have distorted my perception of an innocent interaction? The doubt was like a poison, making me question not just what I had witnessed, but my own judgment and spiritual discernment. But then I remembered Sarah's face that evening, the fear and confusion in her eyes, the way she had tried to step away from Brother Raymond's touch. That hadn't been my imagination. Whatever explanation he had offered for his behavior, it didn't account for the obvious distress I had seen in Sarah's demeanor. Over the following weeks, I found myself watching both Sarah and Brother Raymond more carefully during meetings and social gatherings. Sarah seemed to be thriving in her spiritual development, progressing steadily toward baptism. But I noticed that she no longer stayed after meetings to ask questions, and she seemed to avoid one-on-one conversations with any of the elders, not just Brother Raymond. Meanwhile, Brother Raymond continued his normal routine of shepherding activities. I heard that he was working with 2 other Bible students and had been invited to give a talk at an upcoming circuit assembly. His position and reputation seemed completely unaffected by my allegations. If anything, he seemed more confident and authoritative than before. The isolation I began to feel was subtle but persistent. While no one treated me differently overtly, I sensed a cooling in some relationships. Sister Margaret seemed less inclined to invite me for coffee after meetings. Brother Stevens's greetings became more formal and brief. I wondered if word had somehow spread about my accusations, despite the supposed confidentiality of my meetings with Brother Stevens. 3 months after my initial report, I received a shepherding visit from Brother Stevens and another elder, Brother Williams. They said they were concerned about my spiritual well-being and had noticed that I seemed troubled lately. The conversation was gentle but pointed, focusing on the importance of maintaining unity in the congregation and not allowing personal concerns to affect one's spiritual balance. Sometimes, Brother Williams said kindly, we can become so focused on perceived problems that we lose sight of all the wonderful blessings Jehovah provides through His organization. It's important to keep our eyes on the positive aspects of our spiritual family. The message was clear. I needed to move past my concerns and focus on being a supportive member of the congregation. As winter turned to spring, I found myself at a crossroads. I could accept the elder's assessment, conclude that I had been mistaken about what I witnessed, and return to my comfortable routine in the congregation. Or I could trust my own perceptions and conscience, even if it meant standing alone against the institutional pressure to remain silent. The decision became crystal clear one Thursday evening in April, when I noticed Sarah leaving the Kingdom Hall immediately after the meeting, looking upset. As I walked to my car, I saw her sitting on a bench in the small park across the street, crying. Something inside me knew that I couldn't walk away this time. I crossed the street to where Sarah sat on the park bench, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. The streetlight cast a pale glow over her face, revealing tears that she was trying desperately to wipe away before anyone might see. For a moment, I hesitated, remembering Brother Stephen's warnings about not interfering or causing division. But looking at this young woman's obvious distress, I knew my conscience wouldn't let me walk away. "Sarah?" I said softly, sitting down beside her on the bench. "Are you all right, dear?" She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes, startled and embarrassed to be found crying. "Oh, Sister Judith, I'm fine, really, just emotional about some personal things." She attempted a smile that didn't reach her eyes, the kind of expression I had learned to recognize from years of watching sisters hide their pain behind spiritual facades. "Sarah," I said gently, "sometimes it helps to talk about what's troubling us. I've noticed you seem different lately, more withdrawn after meetings." I paused, choosing my words carefully. "Has someone done something to make you uncomfortable?" The question hung in the air between us. Sarah's face went through a series of emotions: surprise, fear, relief, and then a desperate kind of hope. She looked around the empty park as if checking for witnesses, then turned back to me with tears flowing freely. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. "I don't know who to talk to or if I should talk to anyone at all. Brother Raymond said that if I told anyone, they wouldn't believe me because he's an elder and I'm just a new study. He said it would ruin my chances of getting baptized and that Jehovah would be disappointed in me for causing trouble." My heart stopped. "Sarah, what did Brother Raymond do to you?" The words poured out of her in a rush, as if a dam had burst. She told me about multiple incidents over the past several months: inappropriate touching during private study sessions, comments about her physical appearance that made her uncomfortable, and most recently, an encounter after Thursday's meeting where he had cornered her in the literature room and pressed himself against her while whispering about special lessons he could teach her. "Tonight was the worst," she said, her voice barely audible. "After everyone left, he asked me to stay behind to discuss my baptism questions. He locked the door and said that mature Christian women sometimes needed to show appreciation for their spiritual shepherds in special ways. When I tried to leave, he grabbed my arm and said I was being rebellious and that Jehovah hates rebellion. I felt sick to my stomach, but also vindicated in a horrible way. I hadn't misunderstood what I'd witnessed months earlier. If anything, I had only seen the tip of something much more serious and systematic. "Sarah," I said, taking her hands in mine, "this is not your fault. What Brother Raymond is doing is wrong. Completely wrong. It's not spiritual guidance, it's abuse. And you have every right to be believed and protected." She looked at me with desperate hope. "But he's an elder. He knows the Bible so well, and everyone respects him. Maybe I misunderstood? Maybe this is some kind of test of my faith? Her words broke my heart, revealing how successfully Brother Raymond had manipulated her confusion and spiritual vulnerability. No, Sarah, this is not a test, and you didn't misunderstand anything. What he's doing is a crime, both legally and morally. The God we serve would never ask anyone to endure this kind of treatment. I felt a clarity I hadn't experienced in months, as if a fog had lifted from my mind. At that moment, everything crystallized for me. This wasn't about protecting the organization's reputation or maintaining congregational unity. This was about a predator using his position of spiritual authority to exploit a vulnerable young woman, and an institutional system that prioritized protecting its image over protecting its members. Sarah, I need to tell you something, I said. Several months ago, I witnessed Brother Raymond behaving inappropriately with you after a meeting. I reported it to Brother Stevens, but nothing was done. They told me I must have misunderstood what I saw. I watched her face as understanding dawned. You saw? She asked. You tried to help me, and they didn't believe you either? That's right. And I'm sorry I didn't do more at the time. I should have come to you directly instead of trusting the elders to handle it properly. The weight of my inaction over the past months felt crushing, but it also fueled my determination to act now. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, processing what I had told her. Finally, she looked up at me with something I hadn't seen in her eyes before, a spark of anger mixed with resolve. What should we do? She asked. We're going to report this to the police, I said without hesitation. What Brother Raymond has done to you is sexual assault, and it's a crime. The congregation's internal processes have failed to protect you, so we need to seek justice through the proper legal channels. Sarah's eyes widened with fear. But what about my baptism? What about my spiritual family here? If I go to the police, won't they disfellowship me for bringing reproach on Jehovah's name? Sarah, listen to me carefully, I said, gripping her hands tighter. Any organization that would punish you for reporting sexual assault is not serving God's interests. The reproach has been brought by Brother Raymond's actions, not by your courage in speaking up about them. As I spoke those words, I realized I was crossing a line I could never uncross. I was openly criticizing the organization's policies and procedures, questioning the decisions of appointed elders, and encouraging someone to take action that would inevitably be seen as disloyal to the congregation. Everything I had been taught about submission to theocratic authority was crumbling in real time. Will you come with me to make the report? Sarah asked, her voice small but determined. Yes, I said without hesitation. We'll do this together. And Sarah, no matter what happens afterward, you need to know that you're doing the right thing. You're protecting yourself and potentially other women who might become his victims in the future. As we sat on that bench, making plans to go to the police station the next morning, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. For the first time since witnessing Brother Raymond's inappropriate behavior, I was acting in complete alignment with my conscience. The fear of losing my congregation family was still there, but it was overshadowed by the certainty that staying silent was no longer an option. Thank you, Sarah whispered as we prepared to leave the park. Thank you for believing me and for having the courage to help me when no one else would. Standing up from that bench, I knew my life as I had known it was over. But for the first time in months, I felt truly alive, truly faithful to something deeper than organizational loyalty. I was finally serving justice rather than just serving an institution. And despite everything I was about to lose, it felt like coming home to myself. The next morning, Sarah and I met at the police station downtown. She had barely slept, calling me twice during the night to make sure I hadn't changed my mind about accompanying her. Walking through those glass doors felt like entering another world entirely, one where the rules and hierarchies that had governed my life for 30 years held no sway. The fluorescent lighting was harsh, the plastic chairs uncomfortable, but sitting beside Sarah as she gave her statement, I felt more aligned with truth than I had in months. Detective Maria Santos was patient and thorough, carefully documenting each incident Sarah described. Her professional demeanor helped Sarah find her voice, and she was able to provide specific dates, times, and details about Brother Raymond's behavior. When Detective Santos asked if there were any witnesses to the incidents, Sarah looked at me, and I found myself describing what I had observed that October evening. "You reported this to church leadership?" Detective Santos asked, making notes in her file. "Yes, I did." The response was that I must have misunderstood what I saw. No further action was taken, and I was asked not to discuss the matter with anyone else. Speaking these words aloud to a law enforcement officer crystallized just how inadequate the congregation's response had been. Detective Santos explained the next steps in the investigation process. There would be formal interviews, evidence gathering, and likely charges filed if the investigation substantiated Sarah's allegations. She also warned us that the case would become public knowledge and that we should be prepared for potential backlash from our community. As we left the police station, Sarah seemed lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "I never thought anyone would take me seriously," she said as we walked to our cars. "Thank you for making me feel like what happened to me actually matters." But I knew the hard part was just beginning. Within hours of our police visit, my phone started ringing. Brother Stevens called first, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Sister Judith, I understand you and Sister Sarah visited the police this morning. Is this true?" "Yes, Brother Stevens. Sarah has been sexually assaulted by Brother Raymond on multiple occasions. Since the congregation's internal process failed to protect her, we felt we had no choice but to seek justice through legal channels." The silence on the other end of the line stretched uncomfortably long. "Sister Judith, do you realize what you've done? You've brought reproach on Jehovah's name and his organization. This matter could have been handled internally if you had just been patient and allowed us to work through the proper procedures. With respect, Brother Stevens, your proper procedures failed to protect Sarah. She continued to be assaulted for months after I reported what I witnessed. How many more victims should there be while we wait for internal processes to work?" "I need to see you immediately," he said curtly. "Come to the Kingdom Hall at 7 o'clock tonight. The entire body of elders will be present." That evening, I walked into a Kingdom Hall that felt completely foreign, despite being the place where I had worshipped for years. The elders were seated in a semicircle in the library room: Brother Stevens, Brother Williams, Brother Thompson, and notably absent, Brother Raymond. Their faces were grave, and the atmosphere was charged with tension. "Sister Judith," Brother Stevens began formally, "you stand accused of bringing reproach on Jehovah's name and his organization by taking internal congregational matters to worldly authorities. You have also been guilty of spreading harmful gossip and undermining the authority of appointed elders." I listened as they outlined their case against me. According to their interpretation, I had violated multiple scriptural principles by going to the police. I had failed to wait on Jehovah to handle the matter in his own time and way. I had shown disrespect for theocratic order by questioning the decisions of appointed elders. Most seriously, I had brought the congregation's name into disrepute by involving secular authorities in what should have remained an internal matter. "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Brother Williams asked when they had finished their formal charges. "Yes, I do," I replied, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. "I reported criminal behavior to the appropriate authorities because a vulnerable member of our congregation was being repeatedly assaulted, and your internal processes failed to protect her. I followed my conscience and my understanding of what it means to love my neighbor as myself." "Your conscience," Brother Stevens said with barely concealed disdain, "has led you into serious sin. The Bible is clear about handling matters of wrongdoing within the congregation. By involving worldly authorities, you have violated Jehovah's arrangement for dealing with such issues." Brother Thompson leaned forward. "Sister Judith, we've known you for many years. You've been a faithful sister and a good example in the congregation. But this situation has clearly affected your spiritual judgment. We're prepared to offer you an opportunity to repent of your actions and demonstrate that you recognize the seriousness of what you've done." The offer was clear: publicly acknowledge that I had acted wrongly in going to the police, express repentance for undermining congregational authority, and commit to supporting whatever internal discipline the elders decided was appropriate for Brother Raymond. In exchange, I would receive only private reproof rather than public discipline. "And if I don't accept this arrangement?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Then we will have no choice but to disfellowship you for apostasy and bringing reproach on God's name, Brother Stevens replied. You will be cut off from all association with your spiritual family, and we will announce to the congregation that you are no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses. The ultimatum hung in the air like a sword. Everything I had built my life around, my friendships, my identity, my sense of purpose and belonging, was being held hostage to my willingness to prioritize organizational loyalty over justice for Sarah. I thought about Sarah's tear-stained face on that park bench, about the fear in her eyes when she described Brother Raymond's threats, about the relief she had shown when someone finally believed her story. Then I thought about the comfortable routine I would be giving up, the relationships that had sustained me for 3 decades, the certainty of being part of God's chosen people. I understand the consequences you're describing, I said finally, but I cannot and will not repent for protecting an assault victim. If standing up for Sarah's safety and dignity makes me an apostate in your eyes, then I accept that designation. The shock on their faces was evident. None of them had expected me to refuse their offer of mercy. Brother Williams tried one last appeal. Sister Judith, think about what you're throwing away. Your spiritual family, your hope of eternal life, your relationship with Jehovah. Is protecting one person's allegations really worth losing everything? Brother Williams, I replied, if Jehovah would punish me for protecting one of his daughters from a sexual predator, then I don't think I understand him as well as I thought I did. And if this organization would cast me out for seeking justice for an assault victim, then maybe it's not the spiritual paradise I believed it was. The meeting ended with the announcement that I would be disfellowshipped within the week. As I walked out of that Kingdom Hall for what I knew would be the last time as a member, I felt a strange mixture of grief and relief. I was losing everything I had thought defined me, but I was gaining something I hadn't even realized I had lost: my integrity. 3 days later, the announcement was made from the platform during the Thursday evening meeting. Judith Collins is no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses. The words I had heard spoken about others countless times were now being spoken about me. According to congregation policy, no member could speak to me, acknowledge me, or have any association with me whatsoever. The shunning began immediately. Sister Margaret, who had been like a mother to me, looked through me as if I were invisible when we passed on the street. Ruth Miller, my former field service partner, crossed the road to avoid walking near me. Even casual acquaintances who had known me for years acted as if I had never existed. But something unexpected happened in the days following my disfellowshipping. Sarah called to thank me and to let me know that 2 other young women had come forward with similar allegations against Brother Raymond after hearing about the investigation. The police were taking their cases seriously, and criminal charges were likely to be filed. I also received a call from Detective Santos. Ms. Collins, I wanted you to know that your courage in supporting Sarah and coming forward as a witness has been crucial to our investigation. We've now documented a pattern of predatory behavior spanning several years. Without your willingness to speak up, none of these victims might have found the courage to seek justice. That phone call helped me realize something profound. Losing my place in the congregation hadn't separated me from God or from meaningful service to others. If anything, it had freed me to follow my conscience without the constraints of organizational loyalty. Brother Raymond was eventually arrested and charged with multiple counts of sexual assault. The case made local news, and the congregation was forced to acknowledge publicly that one of their appointed elders had been criminally charged. The organizational response was predictably focused on damage control rather than support for the victims. As for me, I began the slow process of rebuilding my life outside the only community I had ever known. It was terrifying and lonely, but it was also authentic in a way my previous life had never been. For the first time in 30 years, I was free to follow my conscience without filtering every decision through organizational policy. The price of speaking truth had been everything I thought I valued. But what I gained was something I never expected to find: myself. 2 years have passed since that Thursday evening when my world changed forever. As I sit in my small apartment this morning, sunlight streaming through windows I can now decorate for any holiday I choose, I reflect on the journey that brought me here. The woman who once knocked on doors every Saturday morning, convinced she was saving the world, feels like a stranger to me now. Yet in many ways, I'm more myself than I've ever been. The legal case against Brother Raymond concluded 8 months ago. He was convicted on multiple counts of sexual assault and sentenced to 5 years in prison. 3 other women eventually came forward with similar testimonies, creating a pattern that even his expensive legal team couldn't explain away. Detective Santos told me that our initial report had been the catalyst that gave other victims the courage to speak their truth. Sarah has thrived in ways that still amaze me. After the initial trauma of the legal proceedings, she found a therapist who specialized in religious abuse and began the difficult work of rebuilding her sense of self-worth. She enrolled in community college and is studying to become a social worker, inspired by her desire to help other survivors of institutional abuse. I want to be the person I needed when I was 19, she told me recently over coffee. The congregation's response to Brother Raymond's conviction was exactly what I had expected. They released a carefully worded statement expressing deep regret for the situation while emphasizing that his actions didn't reflect the organization's values. Several families quietly left the congregation in the aftermath, uncomfortable with how the matter had been handled. But most members simply accepted the official explanation and moved on, trusting that the organization's leaders knew best. Sister Margaret tried to contact me once, about 6 months after my disfellowshipping. She called my phone and left a hesitant voicemail. "Judith, I've been thinking about everything that happened. I wanted you to know that some of us have questions about how things were handled. Maybe we could talk sometime." I never returned her call. The pain of losing those relationships was still too fresh, and I wasn't ready to navigate the complicated emotions of reconnecting with someone who had to choose between organizational loyalty and personal friendship. My mother, who had been disfellowshipped herself years earlier for questioning certain doctrines, reached out when she heard about my situation through mutual acquaintances. Our relationship had been strained for over a decade due to the organization's shunning policies. But my experience had given me new understanding of the courage it took for her to follow her conscience years before I was ready to follow mine. "I'm proud of you for choosing what's right over what's easy," she said during our first real conversation in years. Building a life outside the only community I had ever known has been both terrifying and liberating. Simple things that most people take for granted, celebrating birthdays, making friends with people of different backgrounds, pursuing education without organizational approval, have become sources of joy I never expected. I started taking art classes at a local community center and discovered a talent for watercolor painting that I never had time to explore during my years of constant meetings and field service. The loneliness has been the hardest part. 30 years of friendships don't disappear without leaving a profound emptiness. There are still moments when I see a beautiful sunset or read an interesting article and instinctively reach for my phone to share it with Sister Margaret or Ruth, only to remember that those relationships are permanently severed. The organization's shunning policies ensure that leaving isn't just about changing beliefs. It's about losing your entire social world. But I've also discovered that there are communities of people who have walked similar paths. Through online support groups for former Jehovah's Witnesses, I've connected with others who understand the unique challenges of leaving a high-control religious organization. Many have become genuine friends who appreciate my journey without trying to convert me to their own belief systems. The authenticity of these relationships is refreshing after years of friendships that were contingent on maintaining correct doctrinal positions. My relationship with faith has evolved in ways I never could have anticipated. For months after my disfellowshipping, I was angry at God, feeling abandoned and betrayed by the deity I had served so faithfully for 3 decades. But gradually, I've come to understand that my anger was really directed at the human institution that had claimed to represent God while protecting predators and silencing victims. I still pray, though my prayers are different now. Instead of requesting blessings for the organization or asking for strength to follow its guidance, I pray for wisdom to discern truth from manipulation, for courage to speak up when I witness injustice, and for healing for all those who have been harmed by religious abuse. My spirituality has become more personal and less performative, more about love and less about obedience. The ripple effects of our decision to speak up continue to spread in ways I never anticipated. Sarah's case inspired other survivors to come forward, not just about Brother Raymond, but about other instances of abuse that had been covered up within the congregation. A local journalist wrote a series of articles about institutional responses to sexual abuse that included our story, alongside similar cases from other religious organizations. Change happens slowly, but it does happen when people find the courage to break their silence. Last week, I received a letter that brought tears to my eyes. It was from a young woman named Rebecca who had read about our case online. She was facing a similar situation in her congregation and had been struggling with whether to report her abuser to authorities. "Your story gave me the courage to put my safety above their reputation," she wrote. "Thank you for showing me that speaking truth is more important than keeping peace." Reading her letter, I realized that everything I've been through, the loss, the isolation, the rebuilding, has been worth it if it helps even one person find the courage to protect themselves from harm. The organization may have cast me out for choosing justice over loyalty, but in doing so, they freed me to serve something greater than institutional preservation. I won't pretend that leaving was easy, or that I don't sometimes miss the simplicity of having all my decisions made for me by organizational policy. There's a certain comfort in absolute certainty in believing you have access to exclusive truth. But I've learned that real faith isn't about never questioning or doubting. It's about having the courage to seek truth, even when it leads you into uncomfortable territory. Today, I'm planning to visit Sarah at her college campus. She's giving a presentation about her research on institutional responses to abuse, and she asked me to be there for moral support. Watching her transform her trauma into a tool for helping others has been one of the most beautiful things I've witnessed in this whole difficult journey. As I prepare to leave my apartment, I catch my reflection in the mirror by my front door. The woman looking back at me has gray streaks in her hair that I no longer feel compelled to cover, laugh lines that weren't there when every expression had to be carefully modulated for organizational approval, and eyes that hold both sadness and hope in equal measure. This is a real story, shared by one of our subscribers. Thank you so much for trusting us with it. If you also have a story you'd like to share, please write in the comments. We would be very happy to tell your story on our channel.